Code Ninja Advisory. Langflow Critical Alert. All right, DevSecOps teams and security engineers, listen up, because this is a priority zero-day transmission. We are looking at a massive, fundamental perimeter breach in the Langflow AI platform. So let's cut to the chase and get right into the intelligence.
We are issuing a formal advisory right now for CVE 2025-34291. Look, because Langflow acts as the central nervous system for so many AI agents and RAG applications, this chain vulnerability is, well, it's absolutely devastating. It completely bypasses authentication. We're talking total account takeover and full remote code execution. If you are running Langflow anywhere in your environment, you need to treat this as an active, in-the-wild incident.
I want you to notice that staggering number right there, 9.4. That is our CVSS version 4.0 severity score. It's classified as critical, and for good reason. It requires zero specialized privileges from the attacker, literally none. It enables full remote code execution and session hijacking just by having a victim who happens to hold an active Langflow session visit a malicious web page. Just one click, that's it. One click and the attacker completely bypasses your secure authentication flow and owns the entire system. Now let's talk timeline, because honestly, it tells a pretty frustrating story of vendor delay. We initially reported this flaw way back in July of 2025, and after months, literally months, of stagnant pull requests and totally ineffective front-end tweaks from the vendor, we were basically forced to execute a public disclosure in December 2025 just to protect the community. And well, the threat landscape reacted exactly as we feared it would. By May 2026, CISA formally added this CVE to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog because it was being actively abused in the wild. That triggered a strict federal remediation deadline of June 4, 2026. This agonizingly slow vendor response, it's exactly why coordinated vulnerability disclosure is so absolutely vital.
Okay, before we transition into the deep dive protocol, I'm pausing for a mandatory comms check. First, make sure you subscribe to CyberTech 79 and enable those notifications. You really need to consider this a security necessity for real-time intelligence. Second, drop a like on this explainer. That's your formal acknowledgement of receipt for this intel. And finally, I need you to comment your current status below. Are you patched or are you vulnerable? We're using this census to actively gauge the blast radius of this exploit across the community. Lock in your comms and let's proceed.
Right, let's dive into this. We really need to understand the mechanics here. How exactly does a single, seemingly harmless browser click on a totally random third-party web page break down your application's supposedly secure doors? Well, it comes down to a perfect storm. It's a series of individually minor configuration choices that, when chained together, create an incredibly devastating attack vector. The very first broken lock in this chain is a severe coarse misconfiguration. By default, Langflow utilizes Fast API's middleware, but with overly permissive settings. They set allow origins to a wildcard. That means literally any website on the internet can make requests to your instance. And crucially, they paired that with allow_credentials set to true. This completely violates fundamental security best practices. It acts like a wide-open invitation, letting attackers make cross-origin requests that actually include the user's credentials. But wait, it gets worse. Compound that first error with the second fatal flaw. A secure setup for a highly sensitive authentication cookie uses SameSite lax or strict to actively block cross-site requests. But look at Langflow's default setting, SameSite None. Because it's set to none, the victim's browser is just going to automatically attach this highly sensitive refresh token to cross-site requests over HTTPS. The token was left entirely 100% exposed to unauthorized cross-origin access.
So, let's map out how this builds into the actual exploit sequence. Step 1, your victim visits an attacker-controlled page. Step 2, malicious JavaScript fires off a cross-origin post request straight to Langflow's refresh API endpoint. Because of that broken cores and the SameSite None cookie, the victim's browser just gladly hands over their refresh token. Step 3, the attacker receives a brand new access token and refresh token pair. Boom, full session hijack achieved. Step 4, armed with that valid access token, the attacker hits Langflow's built-in code validation endpoint. And since that endpoint uses Python's exec function without any sandboxing, the result is arbitrary code execution and full-blown system compromise.
So the immediate question you've got to ask your security teams right now is, are we inside the blast radius? Because the consequences of this exploit, they extend far, far beyond just the Langflow server itself. I really want you to take a second and seriously consider what assets are currently sitting exposed in your own deployments if an attacker assumes control of your AI workflow environment.
The crucial point here is understanding the payload impact. Langflow uses global variables to store and reuse credentials across different AI flows, right? If the system is compromised via this RCE, attackers can easily decrypt and extract those variables. We're talking about exposed workspace variables, external API keys, database passwords, AWS credentials, SaaS credentials, and basically full access to all your downstream integrated services. Compromising Langflow effectively gives threat actors the master keys to your entire SaaS kingdom. It's quite literally the ultimate supply chain nightmare.
All right, the time for passive monitoring is over. I am officially sounding the alarm to initiate patch protocol. It is time to deploy actionable, non-negotiable defenses against this actively exploited threat. Federal agencies have already been mandated to secure their perimeters, and the private sector needs to follow suit right now.
So here are your actionable mitigation steps. First up, upgrade your Langflow instances immediately to version 1.9.3 or newer. This version actually addresses these fundamental cookie and CORS misconfigurations. Second, manually restrict your CORS origins in your environment variables. Never, ever allow wildcards on credentialed endpoints. And third, and guys, this is absolutely critical, simply patching the software is not enough here. Because this is a token hijack and data exfiltration risk, you have to assume compromise. You must rotate all workspace credentials, API keys, and service tokens, and you need to invalidate every single existing user session.
You know, we practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure because users need to know how to protect their systems. When vendors delay critical patches for months, and let's not forget, in Langflow's history, they once took nearly 2 years to properly fix a different RCE vulnerability, public intelligence becomes our ultimate defense. Full disclosure forces fixes. It forces the industry to prioritize actual security over just shipping flashy features. And it arms you with the knowledge you need to defend your networks before threat actors can weaponize the silence. Which really brings us to a harsh reality about the current state of artificial intelligence infrastructure. With AI platforms holding the master keys to your enterprise kingdom, can you really afford to rely on a vendor that actively delays critical security patches? You need to audit your integrations, verify your configurations, and please never assume that open-source AI tools are just secure by default. Lock down your perimeters, execute the patch protocol, and as always, stay secure.